Hello everyone, I am Professor Amit Ganesh Jha, Assistant Professor of Statistics in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics in City Bora College, Shiru. My today's topic is Statistical Inference, which is very much useful in testing of hypothesis and its analysis. In today's presentation, I will explain about some basic definitions which are using in testing of hypothesis. So first definition is population. What do you mean by population? Population is an aggregate of objects or individual under study having some common characteristics are called as population. It is also called as universe. For example, number of workers in a factory, number of students in a class, of all we are considered that as a population. Next, types of population. There are two types of population. One is finite population and another one is infinite population. So what is finite population? Finite population, a population which contains finite number of elements is called as finite population. For example, number of students in a class, number of workers in a factory which are countable, which we can count. That is called as finite population. Second one is infinite population, a population which contains infinite number of elements is called as infinite population. For example, number of insects, number of stars in a sky are the example of infinite population. Next definition is sample. So, any part of the population selected according to statistical rules to study that population is called as sample. Sample is regarded as representative of the population. For example, when we are checking blood group, we collect some drops of blood which is considered to be sample, and from that sample we study blood of whole body in our human beings or another animals and etc. Now next definition is random sample. Random sample is what we are going to study is random sampling means each element of the population is given equal chance or probability of getting selected in a sample. If the population contains n, capital N elements, then probability or chance of getting selected any element at any draw is considered to be 1 by n. Now methods of drawing samples. There are two methods we are going to use to draw samples. One is simple random sampling with replacement, which is also known to be SRSWR. And another one is simple random sampling without replacement, SRSWOR. So next definition is simple random sampling with replacement. In this method, units in the population are selected one by one. First element is selected at random from the population. It is recorded or studied completely and then replaced back in the population. Afterwards, second element is selected similarly, and this process is continued till sample of required size is drawn. In this case, repetition of samples occurred, which is one drawback of this method. Now next is simple random sampling without replacement. In this method, units in the population are selected one by one. First element is selected at random from the population. It is recorded or studied completely, but they are not replaced back in the population. They are kept aside. Afterwards, second element is selected, similar process, and then this process is continued till sample of required size is drawn. In this case, repetition is not occurred, and one case is that population size goes on decreasing at each draw in this method, and the chance of getting selected goes on increasing. Now random sample from a probability distribution. A sample x1, x2 up to xn from the population with probability law. Some function is there with contain variable with constant theta is called as random sample if they are independent and identically distributed. That is IID in short, random variables with probability law. They are following some function f of x theta. Now statistic and statistics both are different things. In this case we are going to study about that statistic term only. If x1, x2 up to xn is a random sample from a probability distribution f of x theta, then the t which contain the variables x1, x2 up to xn is a function of sample value which does not involve any unknown parameter theta is called as statistic, or it is also known to be estimator. Examples are sample mean and sample variance. Next definition is parameter. In this case, if x1, x2 up to xn is a random sample from probability distribution f of x theta, then that t which contain variables x1, x2 up to xn is a function of population which involves unknown parameter theta is called as parameter. It is based on population, whatever variable we are collecting, that is containing with population mean or population variance. Now, sampling distribution of statistic and its standard error. If x1, x2 up to xn is a random sample from a probability distribution of x theta, then the probability distribution of statistic that we have selected t x1, x2 up to xn is called as its sampling distribution, and its standard deviation of that t is called as its standard error. Previously we are up till now we are known as standard deviation. From this topic onward, here standard deviation, another name is standard error. Now, the main important definition in this case which we are going to study is hypothesis. So what do you mean by hypothesis? It is a statement or claim or assertion about statistical distribution or parameter of statistical distribution. That is, hypothesis is an assumption to be tested. For example, many companies, they are claiming that our product is going to be survive up to this time. For example, any electronic company, they are producing bulb, LED bulb, they are claiming that average life of bulb is 1000 hours, and that we can read as null hypothesis H naught with average life mu equal to 1000. This statement they are claiming by company, which is going to be tested with the help of hypothesis. There are two types of hypothesis. One is null hypothesis and another one is alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis, a hypothesis of no difference, is called as null hypothesis. It is hypothesis which is tested for possible rejection under the assumption that it is true. This is main hypothesis we are going to check, assuming that it is true, and after doing the analysis part, then we are claiming that is accepted or rejected. So null hypothesis is denoted by H naught. Example is given here as H naught mu1 equal to mu2. Now, alternative hypothesis. It is a hypothesis to be accepted in case null hypothesis is rejected. That is complementary of null hypothesis is called as alternative hypothesis. This is also called as research hypothesis. It is denoted by H1. If H naught mu1 equal to mu2, then alternative hypothesis may be H1 mu1 less than mu2, H1 mu1 greater than mu2, or H1 mu1 not equal to mu2. There are three possible assumption form is there of alternative hypothesis, either less or greater or not equal to. Now, one-sided and two-sided hypothesis. One-sided hypothesis is the hypothesis of the type strictly greater than or less than. For example, there we have written mu greater than mu naught, or H1 mu1 less than mu2, or one more hypothesis is the proportion of any parameter p greater than 0.5 or p1 less than p2. This type of hypothesis are called as one-sided hypothesis, or the hypothesis of not equal to type. Example is given here in this case, H1 mu1 not equal to mu2, or mu not equal to mu1 not equal to mu2, proportion p not equal to 0.5, p1 not equal to p2. This type of hypothesis are called as two-sided hypothesis. They are not equal to, they may be taken to be one-sided or another side. That's why these are called as two-sided hypothesis. Now, test of hypothesis. In order to study the above stated claims or hypothesis, it is impracticable to study each and every objects or items in the population. Naturally, one has to use sampling method. In this situation, sample of appropriate size is selected. Suitable statistic T, such as sample mean, sample variance, sample proportion, is used to take decision about the acceptance or rejection of hypothesis. These are called as test of hypothesis. Now in that we have two types of errors. One is type 1 error, another one is type 2 error. Type 1 error is rejecting null hypothesis when it is true. This type of hypothesis is called as type 1 error. And type 2 error is that accepting H naught null hypothesis when it is false. More clearly we have seen that in the above table that decision is correct when we reject null hypothesis when it is false or accept null hypothesis when it is true. This is clearly given in this above table, type 1 and type 2 error difference. Now what is critical region? Critical region, there are two types of region. One is acceptance region, another one is rejection region. So let x1, x2 up to xn be a random sample taken for testing H naught null hypothesis, which is divided into two non-overlapping region. One of the region is acceptance region of H naught and the another one is rejection region of H naught. A region in which H naught is rejected is treated as critical region. If a value of statistic which is used to test null hypothesis H naught falls in this critical region, H naught is rejected or accepted otherwise. Critical region is denoted by W or C. These are more clearly from this below graph that one of the region is critical region and which is lies in between acceptance and critical region. Now test, a rule which is used to lead to decision of acceptance of null hypothesis or rejection of null hypothesis is called as test. Then what is test statistic? A function of sample observation which is used to that test H naught null hypothesis is called as test statistic. Level of significance. Level of significance is a probability of rejecting null hypothesis H naught when it is true. It is also called as level of significance, in short LOS. It is denoted by alpha. It is probability of committing type 1 error. It is a proportion of cases in which H naught is rejected though it is true. So the value of this level of significance alpha may be taken as 1%, which is 0.01, 5% that is 0.05, or 10% 0.1. A one-sided and two-sided test. One-sided and two-sided test. One-sided test is one-sided test means a test which is used to testing null hypothesis H naught when alternative hypothesis H1 is one-sided. Previously we have studied about one-sided hypothesis or two-sided hypothesis. So the test which is going to use to test or take decision about that one-sided, two-sided hypothesis, from that type of hypothesis we are going to test and give decision about that is called as one-sided test. And the test which is used null hypothesis H naught when the alternative hypothesis H1 is two-sided hypothesis is called as two-sided test. Next is observed level of significance or p-value. P-value is the smallest level of significance at which H naught would be rejected. P-value is more informative as compared to level of significance. If p-value is less than alpha, then we reject H naught is rejected at 100% alpha percent LOS. And if p-value is greater than alpha, then H naught is accepted at 100% LOS. Nowadays, with the help of computer softwares, in that observed p-value level of significance or p-values are more used as compared to LOS. So this is some basic definition or terminology we are going to study in this presentation. Thank you so much.